Hello, welcome to the September 15th, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field or submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase you're running, whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, and also which level of Cubase. So if it's Cubase 11, Cubase 12. Also, if you could specify which operating system, that's always helpful as well. When asking questions, realize my ability to answer questions in real time will soon be eclipsed. And as we go through the live stream, I'll do my best to catch up with the live questions. But if you don't see an immediate response to your particular question, then, if we could refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. Several hours after the live stream ends, we should have an index pinned to the top of all the questions and topics covered in today's live stream. So you could look for that, and if you wanted to, and that way you could quickly navigate, read a question and click on the link and go to that point in the video. If you wanted to navigate between all of the topics that have been covered in previous Club Cubase live streams, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and at that point, we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that site. But you could search for over 27,000 topics that have been covered in over the live streams over the last 3.5 years. And so we also want to give a special thanks to Agent K and Jazz Dude, who serve as moderators. They don't get paid for this. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better community. And also give special kudos to Jazz Dude for his work with the Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg users. Also, we'll just, so once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America. I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting from outside of Washington, D.C. area in the United States in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching live or watching afterwards, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. All right, so we see question from Eric Johnson. Says, "Hi Greg, please help. I'm switching computers and I can't find instructions to completely uninstall and completely remove all related content of my MacBook. I need the drive space." So there's a utility program. So most of the drive space that's going to be utilized for Cubase will be for content. So if we go to the Steinberg Library Manager, here we could see all of your Howlian content, and you could just click on remove if you wanted to just come over here. So for each of these files, when we go to the info, we'll go to, so let's say and here we can see our Howlian content, all the Groove Agent samples, our Cubase Nuendo content sets. They'll all be just simply accessible here, and you could choose to remove. If you go to details, so let's say we go to our Cubase content here, and we go to details. At this point, you could see the path of where all the VST sound files are. If you're on, you said you're on Mac OS. So if we come over here, let's go to your Finder. And if we go to library, there's some additional files. So if you just drag the application to the trash, that will remove the application, but there's still going to be some preferences. So if you go to the Go menu in Finder and hold down the option key, you'll see the library become visible. Now we could go to the library. We want to go to your administrator account. Let's just scroll back here. Okay, or go to library and you'll see application support. So here you will see in the Steinberg category, you'll see different. You could remove those files under application support, and also you could remove the files for Cubase under preferences. So we'll come over here and we'll just say preferences, and you could scroll down to Cubase 12 in your preferences there and delete those particular files. So that's how you do it. But probably if you need to free up a lot of space, the content, so use the library manager utility and you could easily delete. You could find the particular files that you want to go to details. If you want to go directly to that path and get rid of all the content, you could do that as well. All right, so we see another question from Eric Johnson. Also, I submitted a license transfer to a new owner, but I decided I wanted to keep Cubase. But the license transfer code I was provided isn't allowing me to re-register my software. Why is that? So I haven't gone through the license transfer process, but maybe if you've chosen to initiate the process with your particular user account, that it may not allow you to re-register the same software with the same my Steinberg login, so that and that's to prevent you obviously from selling it to someone and then having the capability of having the my Steinberg account and like you sell the license to someone and you run it and that person runs it. So it may block you on your My Steinberg account if you're trying to do it, since you've chosen to initiate the process of transferring a license. So I haven't really been through that particular process, but that might be what's causing a problem. So maybe if you tried a different My Steinberg account, you can see if it goes through. But it could be that once you transfer the license, that license may not be able to be activated. And I haven't experienced this firsthand, but I could see the logic behind that, where you can't activate it on an account after you've chosen to transfer it to someone else. So, all right, so we see Uno Memento just says it's 13 degrees Celsius in Finland, and he says summer is over. So yeah, it cooled down quite a bit here as well, so it's nice fall-like weather. All right, wonderful to see Mark Rabin from Montana joining the live stream. Always grateful to have Sable Winters on. Glad you could join us this afternoon from Bay Area. All right, we see Jan back with his Cubase Index account. Always great to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas, Texas. We see Benny checking in from Sweden. Thanks for being on. And we also have Stefan from Sweden. All right, XP50 player just says, let's go. All right, we're going. All right, so question from Ace Amadeus. Greg, hope you're doing well. In Cubase 12 Pro, do we have a way to find the key or scale a song wave is in? Thanks. So yeah, let's go ahead and just take a quick look at it. So I'll just do a new project. So when we do the chord detection, we could come over, so I'll just import quick audio file. All right, let's find a particular folder. I was like, yeah. All right, so we'll just take this particular file here. So let's say we just listen to it. So what we could do is I'll select this track, and I think we can just do it directly here. Go to chord track. and we'll create chord events. And then we can see that when we look at this, we can see in the bottom here that we're going to be in C sharp major for the song. So once you do an analysis, so you can select a file, come over to project, and go to chord track and say create chord events. It's going to add the chord track for you, and then at that point you'll see the scale. If you don't see the scale, just kind of click right here on this icon of the chord track and it will show you the key of the particular file. I'm glad you can make it Ace today to join us. Always great to see John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. All right. Okay, so I have a question. I try to render MIDI. I only get empty stereo line. Can you repeat the settings? All right, so let's just jump back. Close this out. Okay, so one of the things that could cause this is, let's say I come over here, I'm going to render this particular MIDI event. So we'll come over to a project window, or go to edit menu, and let's go to render in place. So I'm going to activate the project first, that would help. So edit to render in place. And then I'm just get to my render settings just so you can see. I'm just going to do that. And once we do that, we can see the audio file that's created. Now, sometimes what happens is if the file is record enabled, so let's say if this is record enabled, and I go to render in place. So sometimes if it's record enabled, that might make a difference, but you know, so try that. Just check to see if you have, you know, the record enabled turned on, but you know, really that's all you'd have to do. So let's say I have this set to come here to this. So let's say this instrument track is record enabled. We can see that. So make sure that the track isn't record enabled, and then it'll probably do the trick. All right, always wonderful to see Val Yu from Vienna. Thanks for joining us this evening in your time. See, Eagle Town says, even if I wasn't a Cubase user, I'd probably still watch these. That's good. We try to make it a good, entertaining show for 8 hours a week, provide good programming material. All right, so we have Ayuel just saying hello from Switzerland. Thanks for joining us today or tonight. All right, so we have Soren checking in from Västerås in Sweden. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong. All right, so we have Paul Grooveside says, hi, Greg from Paul in Manchester, UK. I love these live sessions, so I love doing them as well. All right, so we have, I'm sorry, my chat field just jumped. Okay, so we see, says, Greg, I failed to create accent patterns on MIDI notes, like a shaker, for example. Is there only the manual way? Okay, so let's show you a trick with this. All right, so let's say I have an event here. So if you wanted to, let's say, if you want to do like accents, so let's say I'm here and I just want to do my hi-hat, right? And right now they're all the same velocity value. So if we go into the MIDI editor, We could do and go into the we'll go to the MIDI menu to the logical editor, and we'll go to setup. And what we're going to do is I want to take like every other note and just adjust the velocity of it. So we're going to choose transform, and we want to take types that are equal to notes, and we could specify just a particular note if we wanted to only do it on one note versus all of the notes. And what we want to do is we're going to take notes that we'll say we'll go to we'll do up here. So we're going to say we're on notes that are and we'll say last event, and we're going to say and we'll say every other event, and we're going to put an event counter, and we're going to put in 2 here. So right now what we're going to do is to select every other note. So I come over here, and we can see that this is going to select the notes on the every other note. Now what do we want to do with that every other note? So what I'm going to do is, now that we select transform, we're going to take value 2 of the note in a MIDI note message, that's velocity, and then we're going to say subtract 40. So what this will do is take every other note and take the velocity down by 40. So we see that we have all of the same particular velocity levels. I hit apply, and now we could just create our accent pattern. Now, once we have this particular pattern, another method, if you know that you always like that particular pattern, I will just make this into 1 bar. So we have a 1 bar event with our accents here that we see. Now, if we go to our quantize panel, I could drag this particular MIDI event in. And we see, okay, why am I using the quantize panel? So what we could do now is I'm going to just set all the velocities here to the same. And if I wanted to quantize, the quantize panel can do both position and velocity. So I'm going to set my position to 0% and my velocity to 100%. So we see that the velocity is basically the same for all of these notes, and I wanted that pattern of the velocities applied from that, and I'm going to save this as a preset. So now when I quantize, we're not going to quantize the rhythmic aspects, but just the velocity. So I hit quantize, and now I could apply that quantize preset to any different MIDI events like so. So let me know if that's helpful for you. Thanks for your question. All right. So we see from Zephaniah just says, are there any Bluetooth keyboard workstations available in any stores yet? So yeah, there's a number of different Bluetooth MIDI keyboards. I think CME has some. They do a lot of Bluetooth stuff, but there's probably other controllers that are working with Bluetooth. Sometimes they're not as popular because there is some timing. In the past, there's been timing delays that are imposed by Bluetooth. So some people in the past, and it may have changed as technologies have evolved. By the time you played the notes, it wasn't exactly on time because it's transmitting over Bluetooth and it's not really designed for real-time MIDI performance. But you could definitely try it. And Cubase has support for Bluetooth MIDI stuff as well. All right, so we see Candace says, looking forward to finally learn Cubase, still learning live. So welcome to the live stream. All right, so we see from Ace Amadeus, hello to all of you. Hope everyone's doing well. These live streams are awesome. Thanks to Greg and the community. So it's The live streams are great when we have wonderful people asking really unique and insightful questions. I'm just a conduit, and hopefully get to help people. So I appreciate everyone attending the live streams. And all right, so we see from Gothic Melancholy, hello, Cubase 13. So, obviously Cubase 13 isn't released yet. So when it's released, we'll show it. But, we're going to be showing the version that we have available for people to use today. All right, so we see Frank Heckel sending warmest greetings from Mallorca, España. That sounds great. I think I've been to Spain a number of times. Let me just look on a map because I may have been near there. I guess it's Palma de Mallorca. So I was on the the east coast of Spain for a few weeks when I was a teenager in Gandia. So I don't think it's too far from there. But we're glad you could join us, Frank. Thanks for joining us. Always wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas, our staple attendee and beloved ice cream distributor. All right. So we see, hello, Greg is the best. I was wondering if you could make a thorough tutorial on macros. So making a macro isn't hard, but if you have a particular, I'll be glad to kind of add it to my list of upcoming tutorials. But if you have a particular function that you want to do in a macro, be happy to utilize that as well. Or if you want to see how, it's like, can you do this in a macro? I'd be happy to create that macro for you on the live stream. All right, and we have Martin checking in from Martin, Germany. Always a pleasure to see David M. from Liverpool. Glad you can make it today. All right, so we see Martin just says, I tested and bought Spectral Layers 10 Pro, and I could confirm that the results in separating stems is much better than the versions before. Yeah, so and I think it's over time, the algorithms and the artificial intelligence is only going to be getting better. But yeah, it's pretty scary what you could do. All right, so we see Michael Teams has granted my family and myself 1 gallon of amaretto chocolate ice cream. And just says, you hope your wife is doing well. Yeah, she's getting better and stronger every day, so it's wonderful to see. Thank you, Michael. And thanks for all your messages you sent. They're all appreciated. All the wonderful comments got from people. It's really touching to us. And we appreciate it. Made us feel so incredibly warm, and we're just really touched by it. All right, so we have we see a question. How to correctly export stems in Cubase 12. I'm the film composer. I need to export stems like woods, strings, drums, etc. Some of them go to 1 reverb. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. I think we have just, it may not be like a typical composer thing, but let's go ahead, and I think I have one that we could show. Okay, so let's say here I have so I have drums, and these drums are going into a drum group. I'm gonna have, let's say, like guitar and bass, and these are going into their own group. And let's say we have some strings, and these are all kind of sharing the same one reverb. So my drums are going to the same reverb. So we see this is all going to this reverb. I go to my guitar, my bass and guitar group, and these are going into the same reverb. So now that I want to export these and I want to incorporate the different reverbs and I want to make stems, and what would happen before in Cubase 11 is if it shared a reverb, you may hear the reverb return on other channels included in your render. So if the guitar was sharing the same reverb and you exported the drums, you would hear the guitar going through the reverb included. So now what we could do is come over, we'll go to File, and let's go to Export Audio Mixdown. So if at this point I could say I want to export my different groups. So, and this could be like your winds, strings, brass, percussion, synths, whatever. So, and I will just, and when we do this, we're going to say under effects, we want this to be our groups and sends. And if we wanted to include master effects, like if we had a bus, like 2-track bus processing, so I'm going to say groups and sends, and we're going to create new tracks. So I'll come over here, let's export the audio. So the different groups are sharing the same reverb. Sorry, it just had other tracks selected. I'm just going to change this real quick. Sorry. All right. So I'm going to only, so when we do this, I'm going to select only the multiples. And then we're going to just come over and I just want only my groups. And I'll just go ahead and turn off all the tracks here. All right. So I'm going to do this again. So here I just want my drum group, my guitar group, and my keys are sharing the same effects. We'll export audio. All right, so now we listen to our drums. And we don't hear any guitars bleeding through, so it's one reverb. And now, let's say our pad sound. So again, just go to your file menu to export audio mixdown, choose multiple as opposed to single, and select your groups. And then if you want to include all of your effects, just go in the effects section, choose groups, sends, and then export. And that would be all you'd have to do. Yeah, so you don't have to hit the solo button group and then bounce. You could just simply do it all like that in version 12. Version 11, the tracks would kind of bleed through, and it may sound, let's see if I have an example. So in version 11, often you would get a result that would sound like this, where you'd hear the guitar kind of bleeding through, because it shared the same effects, but version 12, that was changed. That behavior changed. All right, John Costigan wants to know if you have hit the like button today. So that's a good question. Hitting the like button allows us to continue to do these live streams, which I think is a neat service to offer. All right, so we see a question, and my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so a question from Zohar. Hi, great to be back. How can I randomize the velocity of MIDI notes automatically to sound like a natural piano player? So there's a number of ways of doing this. So let's say we'll just go to a project that has some piano on it. Okay, so it's just so the piano part here. All right, and let's say we're just going to have all the velocities be identical. So I'll just come over here quickly. All right, so now we're doing this, and maybe it's not as exciting. So if we go to our, you could right click and make sure that you have MIDI modifiers activated. Once you have MIDI modifiers activated here, we could choose to randomize velocity. And let's say we want to go like up, randomize, and this will be on playback. We won't necessarily see it. So we'll do kind of an extreme amount here. And now if I wanted to apply that, I could just say freeze MIDI modifiers, and we could just do our random velocities like that. Another method would be to go into the logical editor, and let's say we want to transform, and we're going to say value 2, which is velocity, and we want to take value 2 and set to relative random values, or we could say set the random values between 70 and 110. So as we do this, or I'll just choose this as, okay, we're going to say type is equal to notes and value 2. So at this point, we could just randomize the velocities like that as well. And you could say, I only want notes between certain pitches, like maybe I don't want the low end, like the very low notes. So let's say I don't want notes below, let's say this is G1. So every note above, let's say C2, I want to randomize the velocities. So at this point, we could say I want to take notes, and we'll say value 1 is bigger than C2. And now I could just apply the randomness to not the low notes in the piano, but just to the high notes. So we could just do lots of things to randomize velocities to make your piano parts kind of come to life. So give those suggestions a try, either the MIDI modifiers or just using the logical editor. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of different presets for velocity, but you could utilize that. All right, great to see you. We see Tommy C. Great to see you on. Best Green Jesus. Says he's excited about new stuff coming. All right, so we see Donald Duck says FL user waiting for Cubase 12 Pro sale. So one other thing that you might be able to do is to check out if there's not a Cubase 12 Pro sale, there's probably a competitive upgrade or competitive cross grade rather is the terminology. So you don't have to give up your FL user, you don't have to give up your FL license. We don't want it. And then all you have to do is and then you could get a discount on Cubase 12 Pro. Okay, so we see question from Martin, question about offline processing. How can I edit selected range of the event subsequently? So if we come over, let's say we did an offline processing on a particular file here. Sorry, I'll just make this less obnoxiously large. Okay, so I grab my range tool and let's go to my offline processing. All right, and so this is, the offline processing is always going to be kind of on the particular file. So I'm going to, let's say, remove, we'll delete that, and now I want to reverse the audio. So this will be obvious as we look at it visually. So, once you come over here, if you select the event, and let's say at this point, I did a invert phase on that, and this I want to do a different process. So let's add a plugin like a delay. So when we come over here, that section will get a delay on it. So now as we go to listen to it, we'll hear on my vocal. So as long as the event itself is selected, I can, let's come over here and I can say this reverse. I want to remove that. So even if you've done multiple events on it, I could just delete that reverse, and we'll have the delay and the invert phase still on. So as soon as you select the event, you could do, whatever editing on the event that you wanted to do, or you could just, again, come over and just select your different files if you wanted to go back. So once the event that was processed is selected, at that point you could still undo freely without any consequences, even after saving. All right, so we see Frank is in southwest of Mallorca, and says thank you so much for the velocity transformation tips. All right, so we'll see, perfect. This says I'll write down a few macro requests for the next live stream. So yeah, that'd be great. All right. All right. All right, we see lots of speculation on the next version of Cubase. All right, my chat field jumped to me. All right. All right, so we see, hello, it's from Esteban Carlos Benson. When I right click to add a track preset in the track view, it allows me to select bus presets. However, when I do this in the mixer view, it does not show buses. Can this be resolved? Okay. Okay, so let's see. So in the track view, we right click and we go to add a track preset. Okay, make sure I'm understanding. So it allows you to set bus presets. So let me just see. I'm not sure if you're doing it. Let's see if we right click and say load track preset. So it says allows me to select bus presets. However, when I try to do this in the mixer view, it does not show buses. Can this be resolved? So I'm not sure if you're on a bus or if it's a track. So let me just I'll just add a group track. So let's say if we go to add a track preset, all right, and let's say if I add another bus, add a group channel, and let's say we go to our bigger mixer, all right. So you see all the track presets were added. So maybe I think I'm maybe misunderstanding. So I'm not sure what you mean by the select the bus presets. but it seems pretty similar behavior. Okay, so we see a question from Tommy C. Greg, is there a way to preview, let's say, 4-on-the-floor kick drums and looking for the right kick, easy one at a time, so I can't get the right one for the song? Okay, so let's come over to different projects, see if it's in my recent projects. Yeah. Okay, so I assume that this is maybe just like a kick drum sample that's dropped in the project window. So let's come over. And let's say, like, I want to take all of these kicks. And replace those particular kicks. All right, so I'm going to come over just to my media bay. So let's say we have this kick drum that's just kind of repeated a lot in the project. And I wanted to audition different kicks. So once I have that, let's come over to the Groove Agent library, and let's just say, okay, let's find kick. Okay, so say I want to audition kick. So if you hold down, just find one. Let me find one that's just not awful sounding. Sorry. Okay, so let's say, and I just wanted to audition these kicks. What you could do is just hold down the shift key and drag it and replace one of the events. Let's say, do you want to replace the one sample or all samples? So just kind of come over here, hold down the shift key. So if you want to hear that in context. So just come over again, hold down the shift key as you drag it. Let me just change my grid here, sorry. So now as I drag, hold down shift. So just kind of drag the shift key over, and that will replace anytime that one sample is used in your project. So let me know if that's kind of what you want to do. Okay. Okay, so we have a question from Soren. Greg, in Pro 12, if I want to change the name on 68 track versions names, they're all named copy of XXXX, and I want copy of changed. Is that possible with the Project Logical Editor, perhaps? Okay, so let's give it a shot here. I'm just going to add okay, so let's say I just want to add multiple tracks, and I want to, I guess, remove the word copy of from the name of all of these tracks. So select these particular tracks here, and I'm just going to reread the question one more time. They're all named copy of XXXX. I want copy of changed. Is that possible? So if we want to remove the text copy of, so I will, let's get to our project logical editor. Okay, so we're going to transform, and we're going to say, we'll say container type is equal to track. And let's go to our name, and we want to let's replace copy of, and let's just put nothing. So let's see what happens if we just run that. Okay, we can. Okay, so let's replace search string. Let's try copy of. So if we come over here, so as we just did, if you want to someone to remove like copy of from all of the text, come over here, choose transform. We're going to say container type is equal to track name, replace search string, and we can say copy of, and then we could just leave parameter 1 or parameter 2 blank, and then that will just erase those particular names. So let me know if that's what you want to do, Soren. It's great to see you on the live stream. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. All right, so we see from Dre, can you make suggestions that plugins be docked in the lower zone of the edit window? So I'm happy to pass it along, but a lot of times, when it goes outside of, not all plugins would fit within the lower zone, and we wouldn't want to impose like size limitations on third-party developers for that. So that could be a little tricky to make sure that graphically all the plugins would be designed to fit into the lower zone, because a lot of plugins obviously, as you know, but I'll pass it along as a feature request regardless. All right, so we see what's the best way to render an audio track with FX in the inserts. All right, so let's say if we wanted to come to this kick track here, and I'll just put a little, we'll just go to my inserts here, I'll just put a little, just put a delay on it. All right, we'll just. All right, so if I have this track, and I have, let's say, the effect on it, and I want that rendered, I could just select the particular track here. Let's go to edit to render in place. And this choice, if we select the track as opposed to events, I could just say let's replace. So we could say remove source tracks, and I want to include the channel settings. If I want the complete signal path, this would include inserts, channel EQ, and channel strips. This would include effect sends. This would be the master. So now I'll just say render, and we could render that way. And I'm going to do it a different approach. So when we do this, let's say I wanted to render each of those clips with. So I'm going to come over here and let's make it instead of separate events, let's make it as one event. So we can now render, and now we could see that all of the processes would be just rendered. So the insert, so just come over to render in place under the select the track, or you could select the events if you want to edit to render in place. And when you go to you could turn it into one event, or you could have the same length of events. If you want the same length of events, you may want to add a tail to include if the effects are lasting, exceeding the length of the event. Or you could do it as one event like I just did, and that would do it. So just doing a typical render in place will do the trick. All right, so we see why are you not showing 12? There are already leaks about version 13 features and new GUI. So currently, we're only showing the current version that's available to customers. Once a new version comes out, we generally always do a pretty detailed live stream of new features once it's released. Otherwise, it's just kind of like a bad tease. So. Thank you for the kind words about my wife's recovery, Estefan Carlos Benson. Appreciate it. Okay. And let me see, Soren. Let me see if it was. I just see about the naming of the track. Find it hard to change the name on track version's name. So let me come over here and let's do track version names. Hang on 1 second, set a message. All right. So let me just see if we do it with a track version. So I'll come here and we'll do like a duplicate version. I'll just start over and we'll see if we can do the same thing with the track versions. Let me just remove these tracks. I'm going to add number of audio tracks. Okay, and then I'm going to create track versions of those so we can get the copy of name. Okay, so now we see copy of V1, like in this name. So let's go back to our project logical editor, see if we still have that. And see if we could replace that. See if this kind of does the same. Okay, so it looks like it doesn't do it for the track versions, but seeing if there was. And let's see if these are all selected, if we could. So if all the tracks are selected, you could say, rename version. And even if you now wanted to come over here and just hit enter, it looks like you could, if we go to rename version, and we may have to put just a character in, let's put an underscore, that you could, with all of them selected, you could just go to the track version field. I could play around with that more, but let me know if I'm still misunderstanding. Sorry about that. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped to me. All right. Okay, so you see from Martin, okay, so you see, Greg, please allow one question about the offline processing. How can I edit the previous selected range of the event in F7 offline processing subsequently? And by the way, the editing does not render new audio when auto apply selected when you change or extended delay time besides auto apply. So when we do, so let's say if I'm here, let me just render this particular track. Here, I'll just quickly bounce selection. Okay, so if we're here and let's say I wanted to do a delay, so let's say I had this selected for my range. I'll just take my snap off. Okay, so if I'm here and we go to F7, so let's put a delay on it. Okay, and I'll change it to, let's say, eighth note delay. So as we listen to our kick now, and I think I still have my delay there. That's probably confusing. All right, so now we can, all right, let's just put like 16th note delay on it. Okay, so now that we've done that delay, so that process We don't necessarily, let's say if we wanted to apply that delay again, so I think updating that isn't going to do it. So that's already kind of baked into the file. So I think what you have to do is just to delete that particular process and now choose a new range. And now as we do this just with the range tool, we'll say, okay, let's do our ping pong delay for 16th notes. And now as we listen to it, and I think, you would have to set the tail or, the tail time before, because that's taking into account as it's doing the offline processing. So adjusting that afterwards doesn't update it. But if you have that adjusted, so that's going to be as it's being processed, it's using that. So when we go to update a particular plugin, it's the processing and not the delay time. So just coming over and changing this isn't going to do it with auto apply. But if you drop the same effect in, you could just that would trigger the auto apply. So if I come here, say let's reverse this, that would trigger the auto apply, but it's auto applying the processing, but it's not auto applying the tail size. So it would this is kind of what it's doing the auto apply of, and not the tail size there. So hope that makes sense, but let me know if I still misunderstand. All right, so we have Lauren Roser checking in from New York. Thanks for joining us. And we see Randy Lee from Texas. Wonderful to see Patrick Emanuel. Glad that you can make it. I was just wondering, it's like, oh, we haven't seen Patrick in a little while, so it's great to see you on live today. All right, so we see question, how to approach to create a tempo map for a track that was not recorded to a click. All right, so there's several different ways of approaching this. Let's come over, see if I still have that one project open. Looks like I was out clevered myself and got rid of it. All right, so a couple of different approaches with this. One, we'll go through kind of the history of it. One method was to just kind of manually do it using the tool. So let's say we just... This is actually not too far off. All right, so I'm going to select the warp tool. And what the warp tool is, when we get to warp grid, this will allow us to basically just drag the particular beats so that we move measure 2 to be right here. So let's say... And at this point, we could manually drag. So we'll make this a little larger to look at, and I'll just say, okay, we're going to drag this to the downbeat. So that's one way. And we could do this in the various editors. But if you don't want to do that for each measure, each beat, another method is just to select the event. Let's go to project and let's go to tempo detection. So once we have the event selected, we'll analyze, and we'll turn on our click. And we can see that Cubase has figured out the tempo for us. It'll figure out kind of what the beat is. And as we come over here, we could just double click. It'll put it into 1/4 meter because we don't assume all music's in 4/4. So as we come over here, so now we can see all our different tempo changes automatically figured out. So that's all you have to do it. So you can do it manually, or like Cubase kind of do the work for you. All right. All right, so we have a question from William Baker. It says, "Hi Greg, I started a new project and found that the audio files were saved in the wrong pool. What is the best way to move them to a new folder and make the folder the new audio pool?" So what you can do, if you wanted to move them into like the current project audio folder, all you'd have to do is go to Media and choose Prepare Archive, and that would move audio files that aren't in the project folder directly into the project audio folder. So that's probably the easiest way. If you had, if you're doing like for archival purposes, you could come over to go to your file menu and choose Backup Project. And at that point, that would place all the files into a new folder. It doesn't necessarily move or copy the files to the existing location, but you could define a new folder where everything will be rewritten to. But probably the easiest way is just the media menu and choose Prepare Archive. All right. Right. Oh, so wonderful to see Pablo from España on. So great. My rhythm section compatriot in Hot Mess. So wonderful to see you on, Pablo. All right, so we see, thank you for the clarification from Esteban Carlos Benson. It says, "I saved a track preset of a bus when I can add it in the track view. However, the preset of the bus will not be listed in the mixer view." All right, so let's say I send this to a group channel. All right, and I just will put plugin. Okay, and then I'm going to save this as a track preset. We'll call it Squash Bus. All right. Okay, so save the track preset, and then when I add it into the then I can add it in a track view. The preset of the bus will be listed in the will not be listed in the mixer view. All right, so let's go to our mixer. Okay, so I'm going to add. All right, let me just add a group channel. And we'll load a track preset. Great, so let's look at our inserts. Will be identical. So I'm just going to reread this again. Then I got it in track view. However, the preset of the bus will not be listed in the mixer view. So, but let me know if it's not showing as a label or is not available. So when I go to load the track preset, here's the one that I just made and that carried over. Let me know if it's not showing up visually as a name, and if so, where you would normally see that, but it seemed like it loaded up as expected for me. All right. Great to see Pablo is able to join us before he gets on the tour bus, going to a new gig. Everyone's always happy when Pablo is here. We just need Gareth to be on. All right, wonderful to see 14-bit MIDI on. Glad you could join us today. All right, so I see more clarifications from Soren. So let me know if renaming all, selecting all the tracks and renaming the track version will help. Michael Team's happy to see Pablo on. All right, so Chatfield just jumped. Find my spot. All right, so I think I'm back to where I was. All right, so we see 14-bit MIDI. Carol's just saying the new Cubase will give an opportunity to release what is long due. So sounds like a good tease. All right, so we see from Jay from Secret Studios. Hi, Greg. Please show demo bouncing tracks with removal of silent parts for sending to mix. Want to avoid extra drawing event into the beginning of track. If not possible, please feature request. All right, so I think, let me just see if I understand. So let's say if we have... So removal of silent parts we're sending to mix. So let's say I have silent parts in this particular rendering of this audio track here. And I just wanted to break it up. So, generally for mix, if you give like one contiguous track, that's always probably better because it's a lot harder for someone to screw up and accidentally move a clip. But if I wanted to cut out the silence in between the events on this particular track, what I would do is go to audio, to advanced, and let's go to detect silence. Once that's done, we could analyze. It'll kind of break down. You could set a threshold and just hit process, and now it'll kind of strip out all the dead silent parts of the audio like so. So let me know if that's what you're looking for, Secret Studios. Pablo wants to know what's the frequent question for today. And he says render, 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 render. Okay, so we see Secret Studios also asks, is there a way to assign attributes to folders such as routing contained in tracks to specified group or specific bus? If not, please feature request. So once again, folder tracks aren't necessarily tied, to audio. So, if I have a folder track, I could have, a tempo track, I could have a chord track, I could have a video track, all of the different events within the particular, within a folder track. But, we could select all audio files in a folder track and say, I want to take, like we could do it in a project logical editor and just say, okay, I'll show just a different example here and different project. Okay, so like, let's say I have, I'll just select all of these particular tracks. All right, so if we want to, assign these to a particular folder, what we could do is, and there's a macro for this, so we could say, okay, I want to, let's come over here. So we'll go to macros, and there's a built-in one. It's like selected tracks to new folder and add group channel. So once we do this, now I could set a particular output. So if I want these all to go to my left output, we could give it a name, and then we could just assign all the tracks within, create the folder, assign all the tracks to the folder, and route it to a particular output and route the bus at the same time. So let me know if that is kind of what you want to do. All right, always great to see Tiago from Brazil. All right, so we see the new version of Cubase includes a Supervision Pong game. I need to ask that. So if we're in Supervision, so I'm in version 12. So if we, let's say I'll just do a brand new, I'll do a brand new instance of Supervision. If you want to see this, I will go under Analyzer. And now, so we can see all the different options, all the different meters that are available. So if you wanted to, so now if I come over and we go to other, and now we can see game, and now you could play Pong if you wanted to. So you don't need, it's available inside of Cubase already, and there's different techniques that you could do to kind of play Pong if needed. So yeah, part is we'll give you that feature free. So it's a little Easter egg. It's probably someone got bored, one of the developers, and wanted to play Pong in the middle of creating a plugin. So the existing version of Cubase has it. It's good for passing time on the bus and on the tour bus at Pablo. All right, so you see question, when I copy a session with its automation in a project, automation's not copy properly. All right, so let's say if I come over here and I have automation on my bass track. So let's say I do this and I have a new project. So we'll create empty. So, when we copy events, I think that it's only going to, copy the actual media over in the project. So let's say if I come here and we go to open the automation, we don't see automation because we copied the events. Now let's say I come here and on this particular project, so we have automation on our base. So I'm going to save this particular project. Okay, and now when I go to a new project, if I wanted the automation to be copied over, because what you're copying is the media often, but let's say I import, let's say tracks from project. I come over here to Amos Moses and we choose our Amos Moses automation. And now we say, let's import the base and we want to include automation. That we hit OK. That now we come over and the base with the automation track is automatically carried over. So generally copying will, the automation is kind of within the project and not tied directly to the event. So if you copy the event, the automation is part of the project. But if you wanted the automation to be copied over, choose to do the import tracks from project, select the particular track that you want and check to include automation, and then you could copy it over to other projects. Let me know if that makes sense or if that's helpful. All right. So we see wonderful to see Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. Says he missed the mixing bus and had to walk to class. So we're glad you're here with us, and it'll all be good if we're all together. So don't worry about missing the bus. All right. Always wonderful to see Michael Marshall from Somerset, UK. All right, so we just see, hi Greg, I use Cubase to come up with ideas and that often don't get saved. Is there a workflow to do this without creating lots of project folders, but retain ability to create a folder for those I want to keep? So once, if you're kind of doing like sketch pads, I know a lot of people do kind of sketches and it's like, okay, that didn't go anywhere. Or, oh, this one's pretty good. And maybe, 1 out of 5 you want to keep. But you weren't like really careful with naming project folders and stuff like that. So really what I would do, if you have the one that you want to keep, you could start off with kind of like a temporary project folder. When you get to the point where you think that you may want to save a particular one, just come over here and go to backup project, and this will ask you to create a new folder. And this new folder is only for the ones that you want to save, not the ones that you're going to discard or just didn't work out. Create a new folder, give it a name. So we'll come over here and we'll just give it our folder, and at this point you could give it a name for the project. And you may see this like keep the current project active. Uncheck that, because what you want to do is once it creates the new folder, and we could say, I want to minimize audio files. So let's say in your temporary folder, you may have files that are not used in this project. And you could check to remove the unused files. And at this point, create that folder and then open that project and start from there. And that way you kind of keep one, scratch pad type folder. And then when the project gets elevated that you want to save, back it up to a new project and then start working on it from the project folder that you defined for the backup. All right. All right, so we have the Heartbreak Time Machine checking in from Sacramento, California. Thanks for being online today with us. See, Michael Teams is reiterating to everyone's existing knowledge that Pablo is famous. All right, so we see Paul Grooveside says these beat and tempo adjustment techniques are really helpful. Thanks. We see Pablo is just always, I'm always incredibly happy to play bass lines to Pablo's great drum parts for Hot Mess stuff. So we hope that we get to do some more projects soon. All right. Sorry, my Chatfield jumped on me. Let me see, catch up. All right, so we see Ted Springman say, I want to make a mono synth follow the MIDI notes generated from a singer's performance, but how does Cubase handle the pitch bend or portamento data so the synth exactly tracks sharp or flat? All right. So if we wanted to take this particular file here, so I'll go into Very Audio. And let's say we have our Very Audio technique done here. So, and we'll come over to our Very Audio. So we look at it. And then what we could do is when we say we want to look at extract MIDI. So we'll see it under functions here. So right here on choose function, we'll say extract MIDI. And then here we could have no pitch bend data. We could have VST3 tuning curves, which is a much higher resolution than traditional MIDI data is capable of. But you could say you just want to take this and create continuous pitch bend data, and that will mimic the kind of the tuning nuances and subtleties, and if people are scooping into notes, where that will be mimicked in MIDI pitch bend data. So you'll see it on the pitch bend mode for the extract MIDI from within Very Audio. Great to see you on, Ted from Los Angeles. See, Pablo has indicated he's a drum squasher. Heartbreak Time Machine says he really needs to explore more track presets. I think like as you start working with projects and you go, oh, that one, you know, that vocal worked out really well. This worked out well. You know, this bass player came over with this bass. Like as you start doing projects, you know, take your projects and save them as track presets, and then you're able to quickly kind of call up. So, you know, if this singer comes over, this person comes over with their particular guitar processor, you could just start off with a track preset just to make it faster. Or if you have a studio drum kit, you know, an acoustic piano that's mic'd up and kind of in fixed position, you could do that quickly. All right, so we see and Yamaha Montage and Steinberg software and AXR4U doesn't work. And I can't go to court. Here is check state dysfunction. So let me know like what you're trying to do. So I mean, I use an AXR4U in my studio. I don't have a Montage keyboard, but I know obviously people that do. So you know, if you're trying to use the USB audio capabilities of the Montage keyboard and an AXR4U, you know, generally stacking audio interfaces over USB doesn't work that way. So, but I run my AXR4U with different keyboards all the time. So, but let me know what's not working exactly. This is from Jan. Pablo says Cubase always has the right plugin for every situation. That's his experience. So, all right, we see Gareth is on his way to Liverpool. That's great. All right, so we see from Secret Studios, is there a way to change the default equalizer, i.e. is there a way to click on the default Cubase/Nuendo EQ and have it replace the standard EQ with frequency 2 instead of searching? So there isn't a way to automatically replace it, but searching generally isn't that hard. I mean, if you have a track preset like we just have shown, but if you're looking for plugins, if you go to your inserts here, so let's say we go to add, the search field will be highlighted, and you can just type in FRE and hit enter and load the plugin in. But currently the default channel strip is going to be set for the channel EQ, and there's reasons for that as well, so that you have project compatibility with everyone. And if for versions that were running prior to Frequency's introduction, that you're going to have that everyone has the same type of processing going on. And that's like really critical for people that want to have the same EQ functions for project compatibility from years ago. But it's really just as you go to drop a plugin, it's one mouse click and type in 2 or 3 letters and hit enter, and you could just load the plugin in very quickly. Right. Okay, so we see, hey Greg, how to layer drums using Groove Agent. All right, so let me just come over. I'll just add an instance of Groove Agent, SE. So let's say I just want to drag and drop a number of tracks here. So let's say I'm going to go to say loops and samples. We'll come over to say Groove Agent SE library. So let's say I just want to find some snares. Okay, so I wanted to label, I want these snares. I'm going to drag all these to one pad on Groove Agent. And usually by default, this will just do them, and we'll change it by velocity. So as we increase velocity, it will change that. But where we see velocity here, and this would be under the instrument, go to edit, and now we could just choose to layer. So now all those samples can be layered together. So right where we see mode, switch from velocity here to layer. And then that's how, and then that one note will just layer all those different snares together. All right, so you see, actually, Greg, I want to go from multiple audio events into single audio events per track for sending to mix without adding steps to drawing an event in beginning. If not, please feature request. Okay, so if we have, let's take a look at it. So let's say we want to all right, so let's say we have our event here, and let's say, so as we do a batch export, so let's say we want to include our event starts at measure 25 or whatever, but we want one audio file that would start at the beginning of the project. So let me just try, I don't think the bounce selection would work, but if we go to our export audio mixdown, so when we're making stems, so we'll go to our file and we'll choose export audio mix down, and I want the left and right locators around the entire area. And then I'm just going to choose to, let's say I just want to export the bass, and we'll import it into, we'll create an audio track. So I guess from what you want, Jay, is to have an audio event that's maybe starting here, but have the event start with silence. So as I come over here, and we can do this across multiple events, I'll say export audio. And as we do this, and of course we could, take every single track in your project and do a batch export. We'll perform our audio export here. It's going to be incorporated into the project at the bottom, so we see the silent area without any, and this is all one contiguous event. So this silence where there is no event is just rendered as an audio file with silence. So let me know if I'm still misunderstanding, but you could just, again, go to your file to export audio mixdown, and then the length of the events is going to be set. And if you want to do it for multiple events, you could do it like that, and the length is going to be set based on, it will create one audio file that is the length of the left and right locators that have been selected. All right, so we have a question from Rick BM. How can we create our own macros? So macros allow you to kind of chain different keyboard shortcuts together. So we go to our key commands area, and let's say we want to make a macro to, to take this event and here, I'll just, so just thinking of something to make a macro for. So let's say we want to make a macro to hide tracks that are, so then what we're going to do, I'm just having a blank, so I'm trying to come up with an idea for a macro. I can make a macro once I have the idea or someone asks for it, but we're going to say new macro. So we're going to come over here and say, this is our name. So we'll say, cut this down, or whatever the name of the macro is. And then what we're going to do is to select the particular function. So we could say, I'll just cut this here. So we'll come to this track. So let's say we'll go back to our key commands, and let's say, just go to new macro. Okay, so, and now what we want to do is say, okay, like I want to go to edit, and let's say select all on project. So we want to select all on track. And you could actually kind of search for particular functions. And then once you have the function selected here, just simply add it. And let's say now I want to, so at this point, and macros can be incredibly complex. So if you wanted to even have a macro that does, like 15, 16 steps, we could create macros. But basically it's going to be, we're going to now just create a series of commands, and then I wanted to select all events, and let's and whatever functions that you want to do. And then once you have all of the functions, and we can think of this as, instead of hitting like the different functions one by one in order, that the macro can execute those functions. Now to run the macro, come over to edit menu, and you can see the macros listed here. Your list of macros will probably be much shorter than mine, But this is where you could then trigger that macro, and you could assign a particular keyboard shortcut to macros as well, so that you could customize that. So if you always do this particular type of function, you could just trigger it from a MIDI controller as well. But there's a lot of macros that are included to kind of get you started. All right, we see Pablo has to take off, so it's wonderful to see you online, Pablo. Hope to see you future, and hope to be playing some more music with you remotely here. So we see Gerald Ely, just saying Pong. You're kidding me. So yeah. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped again. All right, so we see the Heartbreak Time Machine. Question, can you walk through opening a VST Live project with VSTs and MIDI mapping in Cubase? So I'm not sure if the MIDI mapping is carried over, but if you wanted to get the media in, all you'd have to do is go to File, and you'll see VST Live, and you could import media project. And if you wanted to take your project from Cubase, you could export project from Cubase into VST Live, and take the media project from VST Live and import that into Cubase. So once VST Live is installed, you'll see this little option become available in your Cubase so that you can get projects back and forth. All right, so you see Gerald Ely saying Pong, that's all you needed. One more reason not to finish a project. So if you get paid by the hour, it's a great way to maybe pad a little bit of time. All right, so we see Greg, can you please open Cubase 13 and show us the new compressors or the new chord pads? So Cubase 13 isn't out yet, so I would be violating potentially a non-disclosure agreement. When it's out, we will do a walkthrough of it in detail. So keep looking. We'll make an announcement as soon as it is announced. The next live stream, if it's that day, if it's 4 days, a week, the next live stream after the release, we will do kind of a detailed feature walkthrough of all the new features of new versions. So, and you can probably see if I go to my computer here, I go to my applications that I have 8.5, 11, and 12 and Elements, so I don't even have it on this computer. So, but when it's ready, we'll show it to you. See, Michael Teams just says Cubase developers have a sense of humor. All right, Alfred G. Pogo asks, hi Greg, can you explain the difference between the part editor and the sample editor and common situations where you may use one over the other? So let's go ahead and take a quick look. So let's say I have all these different events here. Okay, so we have different events. And when we double click on these, we could go into the sample editor. And this would allow us to do kind of, whatever, functionality we want within the sample editor. Very typical. Now, we also have something called a part editor. And a part editor allows us to take a collection of events and treat them kind of as a single entity. And often where people run into part editor, where they learn about it, it may not be as obvious as if you take all these events and grab the glue gun and glue an event together. So now we've taken multiple events and we glued them together into a part. And the part is now the particular events. Now within the part editor, if we had different recordings, so let's say I wanted to do just a quick like cycle record, we can come over here. I'll just do one measure. All right, and let's say I was recording within the part editor. So let's say I'll come here and I'm going to put the cycle on. That would help. All right, so now if we wanted to kind of blow this up, so sometimes a lot of people may kind of treat this as kind of one particular event. You can sometimes see the different lanes within a part editor, so sometimes people would use that, but generally it's going to be for, I want to come over here and I want these different events, and maybe I wanted to, within this editor, do little different tweaks, and I want to change within the part editor. The part editor is also used when we do shared copies. So when I hold down my shift key and drag this out, we can now make changes in the part editor that will be available with shared copies. So if I select this first one and I want to change the volume on that, any time that we have a shared copy, and that's just dragging shift plus dragging from the right center edge, that this change that I make in that one part will be applied to every single copied part. So if I do a fade in here, we'll see that that's going to fade in every copied part. So we come over here. So those are some of the reasons that people would use a part editor. And if you wanted to, like, oh, I totally made a mistake and accidentally glued parts and I want to get it back to events, we would go to your audio and you would just say dissolve part. And at that point, we can now go back to events from parts. So parts are kind of a collection of different events so that we could edit them as one single entity. All right. Michael Teams wants people to whacketh the like button, so we'll concur with that. All right, so we see Tom UC says, Greg, on import tracks from project, I understand how to import audio tracks, but I can't figure out how to import a instrument track with everything. Is the plugin, i.e. the plugin instruments with all automation, etc. All right, so let's say I want to import, so we'll come over here, let's say we'll import tracks from project, and let me just find... Okay, so I'll take this project. So let's say I just want to import my flute part here, and I'm going to put it to new track. All right, and let's come over and see what happens. All right, so as soon as we've done that, it's loaded up the instrument. So we can come over here. And the parts with all the data is loaded up. So make sure that when you do that, so we say import tracks from project again, that, as soon as you, open that up, make sure that you have, that you want the events, the channel and inspector settings, or automation. Make sure that those are checked. But it looked like that worked kind of as expected to me, just by taking that particular flute track from the project. Let me know if I did something differently than you. All right, always is so wonderful to see Jean-Marie Horvat. He'll be our legendary studio engineer attendee. So he thinks I'm a stud, so I'm not as cool as Jean-Marie. So he says the guys that plugins with Cubase and Window are amazing. Very impressed. That's great. All right. So we see, hi Greg, question: how to make shortcut to keyboard to open all plugins loaded on insert of selected channel. So I haven't been able to do this. I've tried it in the past, and I saw some guy did a video that, he's like, I figured it out how to do it, and then it's like all sorts of like, different utilities, like third-party utilities that I think were costing extra to do it. So I don't know of a keyboard shortcut that does it, but one of the things that you could do, and I know it's not a keyboard shortcut, but I think if you hold down is it Alt and click on the Edit button here on the particular channel. So if you come here, is it? I thought it was. Let me just check my inserts here. So if you hold down Alt plus Shift, that you could open up all the plugins, but I don't know of a keyboard way to initiate that other than just kind of that particular mouse and keyboard combination, and clicking on that particular function. I will play around with it some more. And I know that there's some workarounds maybe with the, using, you could open up each one using the, MIDI remote, but I don't know of a way to, with a keyboard shortcut to do it. I'll continue to kind of see if I could come up with some way to do it, but I haven't found it yet. Sorry about that. But hold down Alt-Option plus Shift and click on the Edit Channel settings, and that will open it up, but it's not just a keyboard shortcut that you could fire off. Or I haven't found one yet, unfortunately. Okay, so we see from At The Source Studios, any way you can show the process to get linked editing on multiple guitar tracks, multiple vocal tracks, guitar, etc. Okay, so let me just jump over. All right, so if you wanted to do, let's say editing, let's say I have my drums here, and I'll activate the project. If I just hit Control or Command plus G, I could group channels. And now as I do edits here, as I come over and do cut, that those different tracks will automatically be kind of tied together. And to untie them, you could hit Control or Command plus the letter U, like ungroup. So Control or Command G to group, or Control Command U. And if you wanted to do something like, okay, I wanted to do warping, so if we go to our free warp tool, what we could do now, if multiple events are selected, at this point, some of the functions will be designed just to do warping like so, where, if multiple events are selected, that you could warp multiple tracks simultaneously. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so we see in Halion Sonic, how can you have the MIDI trigger multiple different sounds within one instance of Halion, piano, synth, effect sounds, etc.? Okay, so if we come over, I'll just kind of show you. Okay, so let's say we have this project open and we want to open the instrument. So right now we could have, 16 different instruments in Halion Sonic 7. So, we'll see MIDI channels 1 through 16. So you could just come over here and be able to have multiple sounds all playing. So every sound is going through this one instance of Halion Sonic. So, and then if you wanted to, layer sounds together, if you get to your MIDI channels, you could, if you wanted to put all these on, stack 16 different sounds on one particular track, you could do that by assigning them all to the same MIDI channel. And you could say, okay, I want this one to be transposed up an octave, down an octave. I only want this sound to be in these particular note ranges as well. So let me know if that's what you're looking for. But you could have, multiple sounds, 16 sounds in Halion Sonic. So we see Secret Studios just says, I was bouncing instead of exporting. Woo, on many methods. It said, woo, so many methods. Thank you. So glad that works. But yeah, and then you could do that, exporting across all your tracks and just kind of, we're just making stems and having fun. Boom. Okay, so we see question from At the Source Studios. Help. Sometimes when I drag and drop a track from file over an existing track, the length is different than the file itself. Also, volume can be different. All right, and I just see, is it possible Cubase sees an incoming track with the same name as an audio file already in the session, even if deleted, and just brings that audio up instead of the dropped in audio file? So generally it could depend on a preference. So it could happen. So if you're not careful with your naming, and if you are dragging, so say if we go to preferences, to editing, to audio, and we could say on import audio files, we could say use settings. So one of the things is copy all files to the project folder, and if two files have the same name, it will automatically add an extension to the file to differentiate it, so that, because you can't have two of the same file names in the same project. So it's going to automatically add a distinction. Now also it could depend on if so if they are the same names, but there's also copy all the files to the project folder. If that's not checked, and this is one of those dialog boxes that kind of pops up, and you could say don't show me again. But if that doesn't pop up, that file, even if it's the same name, is in a different location, a different folder, then it could coexist with a name that's in a different, it could coexist with a audio that's referenced that has the same name, because it's the same name but a different location. So it could depend on how kind of your editing preferences. So you get editing audio, of how that could behave. And I'm not sure how you're dragging and dropping the track. If you could, if you're doing it from from the project window. So let's say if I'm here on this, and let's say I do a new project, All right, so let's say I drag this file. So I'm not sure if you're dragging it like from here to there. And then if it's deleted, so I'm not sure if you're dragging and dropping this way or dragging and dropping from the media bay. Also, one of the things you could do is just kind of come over here and you could say, move to origin time. If it's based on timestamps, this file may not be. But, so those are a couple of other settings that you could do. So maybe if you could give us more information on how you're dragging and dropping and what those preferences are set to, that could change the behavior. All right, so you see from comment from John Koskian, thanks for the tip, handling musical sketchpad project files as one project. I'll review the video. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions as you're kind of working with the method. See the Heartbreak Time Machine says macros are incredible. Okay, so we see from At Source Studios a question about the Hallian Sonic. So he's looking to have multiple parts playing, different sounds for each part, not one MIDI part playing. So once you add a, so let's do just a new project. I'll show you. So what you can do is just add the instrument track, and this may be what's going on. So let's say, okay, now we have our instrument track and we have this loaded up. So let's just load up a preset here. All right, so now if we wanted to go multi-timbral for the MIDI, what you would do is just select the instrument track. So, and now that we can add MIDI tracks. So now when I come over here, we can see that this is going to the same instrument, but now we could just go to MIDI channel 2, and as we play, I go to MIDI channel 3. Let's go to channel 4. So the first channel will be an instrument, and then add MIDI tracks, and that will automatically create the MIDI track for you to go to the same instrument. And that's how you could have this 16-part multi-timbral operation. So the first one, you want to add an instrument track, and then just select it and add MIDI tracks, and that will carry over the routing and automatically increment the MIDI channel so that as we select different tracks, it will select the correct sound inside of Hallian Sonic based on the MIDI channel. All right. So we see the Heartbreak Time Machine was the 88th like. So that's good. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right. So we see At the Source Studios question, when is Cubase 13 coming out? So when it's ready. So then it'll be released. So, and as soon as it's released, we will do kind of a detailed walkthrough again of all the different feature sets in it. So we see from, then we see when is Cubase 13,000 coming out. I may be retired by then, but hopefully we'll keep going. I'll probably get up to Cubase 23 or so. All right, we see Jean-Marie Horvath just kind of doing his subtleties for, he's desiring some ice cream from Michael Teams. So, all right, and he's been granted 1 gallon of Scoopy's Black Diamond ice cream. Sounds great. Okay, so we see for the Heartbreak Time Machine, does a track preset also retain the expression maps? Let's give it a shot. So let's find out. Okay, so I'll just remove these. Let's come over to add an instrument track. Let's do a little HSO action. All right, so I'm going to import the key switches. So the key switches may be saved within the track or within the event itself, but let's see if it does. So let's come over here and go to the expression map. We'll import our key switches. Okay, so we have those key switches. That might be at the event level, but let's save track preset. Okay, let's remove that track. We'll just using track preset. And so, yep, it looks like it did. So, yep, so it looks like that was automatically carried over and saved within the track preset. So that's good. All right, so great to see Fred Rock. Kjellborg says, I've been watching on TV, put a like now. So thanks for joining us. All right, Michael Team says, smash that like button, keep Greg gainfully employed, and the live stream's going. Okay, so you see, hey Greg, do you think we will have a Cubase update before the end of the year? Just a hint. You know, when it's released, we'll let everyone know. I would speculate that it's likely, so that may be the only. But when it's out, we'll be sure to let you know, and you'll hear about it. And I think people will be excited about, because Steinberg's always delivering great stuff. See, Nathaniel Walker just says, you knew it was coming, Greg. All right. See, the Heartbreak Time Machine. Let me just. It says, let's give it a shot. I love Greg. Yeah. And it just says, oh, I bet you're right. Key switches in the events. Oh, sweet. That's a nice time saver. All right. All right. So I think I'm at the end of questions for that. Let's see if there's any more that kind of come up. If not, we'll migrate over to some of the questions that were mailed in. All right, so let me go to some of the mailed in questions. Let me just open up my document. All right, so we had this question from the last live stream of splitting an audio track into 4 different frequency ranges. And it seems like I was on the right idea, but it just wasn't happening for me last week. But I set up a project and we'll take a look at it. All right, so the concept was we're going to take an audio track and split it into 4 different frequency ranges. So I recorded just a lovely high fidelity white noise sample here. So we look at this frequency wise, we're going to see that we have a pretty even distribution of frequencies. All right, we're at like minus 12 dB, I think. And what I've done is I've created 4 group channels. And on this track, through the sends, I've routed my group channels. And I'll just put these to 0 dB. All right, so now as we play, this audio is being distributed to our group channels. On the group channels, each of the group channels will now have I just put an imager plugin because we could isolate the particular frequencies. So we have the low frequencies on this group. Just turn it up so you hear the rumble. Let's go to our next group, kind of our low mids that we see here. So that frequency band is selected. Let's go to our high mids that we see in this channel. So those are isolated. And now we'll go to our high frequencies in this particular channel. And now what I've done, if I want to actually capture those, is I've set audio channels. And I just put it into a folder here. And the input for this channel, my low frequencies, I have group 1 as the input, group 2 as the input, group 3 as the input, and group 4 as the input. So what I'm going to do is we will place these tracks into record. So the audio is going out into 4 different groups. Each of those groups has the imager plugin to isolate the frequencies, and these channels have the input ports coming from those groups. So hit record on our audio channels, and I will actually make sure that we have all 4 of those selected. Turn this down so it's less annoying. All right, so now when we want to listen to our different tracks, we can see that now in real time that we could have the low frequencies, and let me just put this in supervision so we could see it a little easier. Just put on the spectrum bar instead. So we see the low frequencies, the low mids, our upper mids, and our highs. So that way we could kind of take any particular source and break it down to different frequency spectrums in real time and capture the audio output of it. All right, so we have a question. Hi, Greg, from Port St. Lucie, Florida. So used to rep down in that area years ago. So thanks for the question. Longtime viewer, first time question. How do I utilize the hit points groove I created on a MIDI track? Okay, so I'm just going to create a quick MIDI track here. And let's say I will put in just beautiful 16th notes, or I'll do just straight 8th notes going on here on this particular event. All right. And I want to extract the groove of a drum loop and apply it to this MIDI information. So let's find a quick drum loop. Of course. See if we, looks like all one shots in that particular, oh, I'm going to take this off, sorry. Okay, so let's add this as a drum loop. So what I want to do now is we're going to take this particular drum loop, I double click, we go into our sample editor, we'll go to hit points. We're going to basically find the rhythmically significant points, the hit points, and we could adjust the threshold if necessary. And then we'll see this little create tab. So let's create a groove. All right, so we see that this is Tech House Drum Loop 18. All right, so we see this groove, and now we go to our quantize panel, and we could do it directly from here or go to your edit menu to quantize panel. And we can see that this is the groove that's been applied. And now what I could do is we see my straight eighth notes here. And I'll make this just a little, we'll zoom in. So we're going to have just a number of different events here. So I'm going to select that event and we will come over and hit quantize. And now we could quantize that particular, and I'm going to come over first and set our position to 100%. And now when I quantize, we could see that the position of all of the notes here will be shifted. So all you have to do is create the groove. The groove is going to show up in the as a preset in the quantize panel, and then you could just take that particular groove and use that as the basis for quantizing other events. All right, so we had a question in VST Live. Is it? I've come across another serious problem. The inputs show up just fine in select input in the track headers. However, I can't get the outputs to show up in select output device. All right, so let's take a look at VST Live. And if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of our live performance kind of production software. You know, so if you want to have backing tracks and lights and lyrics and chord changes. So we'll come over, let's just do a new project. And we'll just choose kind of our folder. All right, so if we're kind of starting off, you know, we often would go to, let's say we have our tracks here. So I want to go to my tracks. Let's add an audio track. All right, so we have our audio track here. So I think the trick to this is to go to the mixer, and we want to add an output here. So we'll just say, okay, let's add outputs. Now we go to the, I think it's devices to connections menu, and we will go to our audio outs, and I will just go ahead. I had this one kind of set up. Let me just select this one, and I'll remove it. So, and go to our audio outs, and now we're going to add, I'll just say 3 and 4 of my audio interface, and we could give it a name. So let's call it 3 and 4. Okay, so we'll come over here. Now when we go back, we'll close this window out. Now that we have the outputs already created, we can now just choose to send to route these outputs in the mixer. So I think we would just come over here. We see 3 and 4 that we created. And now when we go back to our tracks, we can just take the output here and then send it to an audio output, and you could just choose directly from there. So you need to add in the tracks here first, and then we could give it a name. So we'll call this 3 and 4. Then when we go to the tracks, audio outputs, you'll see the 3 and 4, and that's how you could have multiple outputs from VST Live. I realize it could be a little counterintuitive, but go into the mixer first and add the outputs there, and then to your devices, to connections, and then add it, and then you should be fine with it from there. All right, we'll exit out of that. All right. So we see, tell me please if there's a way to get a full project initially fixed in key of C, but finally sounding better in D. For that, I've used a transpose track and wish I could now work in that very key of D with a non-transposed new project, and consequently dealing with the right key, scale, and chords. Thanks in advance. All right, so let's look at our export Q project here. All right, so this is kind of a combination of MIDI and audio all together. And I'll play the correct project so we could hear it. Okay, so, and I will revert this because I think we've changed it pretty good. Okay, so now, so we'll just kind of get our sense of tonality here. So we have our MIDI. So I'm going to add a transpose track. So we'll come here, go to add our transpose track, and let's say at this point we wanted to transpose up to. So now all of our and let's say I wanted to go back to our home key at that point. All right, so we're doing this and it's doing the processing in real time. All right, so now I'm going to just select, like maybe I don't want to transpose the drums, but I'm going to take the bass, and let's say I want to take these tracks, like my audio tracks here, and sorry, let me just. Okay, so now that I have those particular tracks, I select the tracks and I'm going to go to render in place. So we'll go to our render settings, and I'll just do it dry for now. All right, so we'll say render, and I'm going to remove the source tracks. So I'll come over, we'll render in place. Okay, so now that we listen to it, I'm going to remove the transpose track. So we may have to do kind of a multi-step thing. So we may, just take the MIDI, and at that point we could, let's look at our MIDI and see if we do freeze MIDI modifiers, if that does it. No, so, but for the MIDI, we might have to transpose it separately. So if we just split here, here we could just double click, and if I just select all the notes, we could go up to, and if we had a chord track here, so if we change the key of the chord track, we could, just select our chords here. And transpose, let's say up to, we'll do root key at B. So now as we do it, I think our audio will, and I'll just mute, get rid of the transpose track, and we'll see if it's... So you may have to do kind of stage processes for MIDI and audio separately, but if you do a render in place, and let me just, I'll also try to just add a transpose track just here. I'll try a different thing on the MIDI to see if that would follow the transpose track. But you can see that the audio is rendered without, you know, the audio is just rendered without any capability, without any changes. Once you do the render in place, the transpose track is automatically done, and then you'd have to transpose like the chord track separately. But let's see if we get a MIDI. I'll just try if there's the freeze. I mean, you could do the transpose setup, but just try to remember if there's... So it didn't look like the freeze MIDI modifiers work, but so it'd be a kind of a multi-stage process. But you could do the audio, which is kind of the hard part, just by rendering in place and then replacing the particular files. And then transpose the MIDI separately, which is easy, and transposing the chord track, which is easy. So that way you could go from C to D and not have any concerns with that. All right, and we had this question, I think it was from Peter from Montreal, about being able to select and preview presets for Hallian Sonic from the Right Zone Media Bay. And says it seems to be working. Let me just clear my throat. All right, so it says, and it's from, I think, maybe last Friday. It says, create a new project, open the right panel, VST instruments, chose Hallian Sonic, amped electro, chose a preset, played keys on my MIDI controller, and no sound. This happens when I strike keys on a virtual keyboard as well. Also, choose flux, and that yielded same results. No issues when I do presets from either Pad Shop or Retrolog. Turns out, thanks for your time and assistance. So let's go back to this project, and let's say we have a Hallian Sonic loaded up. So when we go to, let's say before we even, perhaps add an instrument. So let's say we have the instrument track here and we want to preview our different sounds. So we'll say, let's get to our VST instruments and let's go to Hallian Sonic. So I think, and I've seen it kind of work consistently on some, and I'm wondering if maybe it's like the synthesizer based sounds will load up and maybe not sample based is kind of maybe what it seems to be. I think, to be able to kind of choose the sound right here. So let's say I want to go to, let's say, so amped electro is going to be, let's say if we come here, if these will, so that's going to be samples on the wavetable synthesis. But, so so it seems like it works maybe some instruments, and it seems like it works for the ones that are kind of synthesizer based as opposed to sample based. But one other thing that we could try is if we just go to this particular instrument and we load the instrument up, and we have our little menu over here, and I realize that this could be, perhaps a little inconsistent, that I don't have any sounds loaded up. So let's say, I think if we do kind of the, So it's good to load one patch up. I think if we go to load, maybe it's in that some of these, so I think it's, it may be that like some of the particular sounds, so let's say, okay, I want strings from but I do kind of see some inconsistencies over here. I'll see if I could discuss it with team, but it could be that maybe it's not loading up the samples, and that's why it could work with Retrolog. But let me just try also, maybe Hallian 7 might be slightly different. But let's try it with Hallian 7, because I thought if it did it kind of within the internal browser that there was more capabilities for that. So, and then yeah, but it looks, I can see kind of inconsistency in some of the libraries. I'll spend some more time kind of playing around with that. But I think it might be like previews may be doing from the synthesis engine and maybe not the sample-based engine. All right, let me just jump back real quick to our live questions. All right. Thanks for all the great questions. Again, you could send questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. All right, just jump back to where we were. All right, so we see from Lionel Thomas Art Studio, Greg, it's weird. I have instruments loaded properly, but I hear no sound. Everything is normal, but on certain instruments, no sound. Any ideas? Also, if I load contact strings, for example, and I have a MIDI note session running in them, I switch to another instrument, then I come back to the strings and the dynamics has changed. It's way lower. So sometimes with string libraries, it could be if it received, a lot of them will respond dynamically to different controllers. So a lot of libraries may respond to like expression control or modulation for the dynamics. So it could be, maybe if your controller had changed, that it's sending the wrong, that it's changed the dynamics control for the particular instrument, and that's causing kind of what you're running into. But let me know if it's, particular instruments, or if it's every instrument, if it's only contact for, instruments that are hearing no sound. And one thing that you could always check is like, as you have a sound loaded, most instruments would allow you to audition directly using just like a built-in keyboard, and you could see if that is responding using a built-in keyboard or it's not responding to MIDI. So that information would be helpful. Okay, wonderful to see Michael Pierce on. All right, He says he's very much lurking today. He says, Greg will have that weird question for you over the weekend. Been hiding in bed for a few days. Well, hope you're feeling okay and get up over the weekend. I look forward to your weird question for Tuesday's live stream. All right, so we see from at the Source Studios, if I have 12 Pro and a friend has 12 Elements or LE, is it possible for me to make a template for them? So you can just make sure that your template includes only tools that are available. So if your template has more tracks, if you put 200 tracks in your template, that's not going to load up because there's a limit to how many tracks or which particular plugins are in the template. But if all those functions work, you could save over the project file should be able to load right up as long as it's not missing plugins, and it will load up, but the plugins may not be there if they're not capable of running in that version. But generally, for the most part, if it's just like routing to here and there and 10 audio tracks, I think you'll be fine. It's just when you include elements that are not available in the lighter versions that you run into problems with that. See, Jazz Dude was doing filtering like we were doing just on the for early 5.1 stuff in 2001-ish. Yep, had to do it then too, so. All right, so we see at the Source Studios, Greg, what computer specs do you have to be able to run 1 million sessions at once? Laughing out loud, think of upgrading to i9 processor. So the computer I'm using now is just it's a Mac M1, and I have, we'll show it to you. We'll go to the system specs. When I go to, so I have 64 gigs of RAM. It's an M1 Max. I have 2 terabytes of, SSD storage. I personally I have an i9 myself, like a 10900. And to me, my i9 feels faster than this. Like when running Cubase, I haven't done exhaustive comparisons, but my i9 flies as well. To me, my i9 feels faster than this, and with that, I recently upgraded it from 64 to 128 gigs of RAM. I haven't super pushed it with orchestral stuff, but it's just nothing special, just pretty off the shelf. I didn't do any tweaks to it really, so. But yeah, so I'm just running M1 Max. It's already about a year old at this point, so. All right, so wonderful to see Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California. Glad you could join us today. Wonderful to see you on the live stream again. Okay, so we see at the Source Studios says, thank you for the help with Hallian Sonic. Beautiful. It's beautiful. That's great. All right, great to see Nick on as well. All right, so we see from at the Source Studios, can you please go over how to switch to the Melodyne extension, and also how to make similar moves as a Very Audio, like stretching, etc. So I don't have Melodyne on this computer. Sorry about that, but any audio that you have, just to load it up, and I use Very Audio. But if you wanted to access it via an ARA2 extension, once you go to the track here, all the ARA2 extensions like Hallian, Spectral Layers, I think now even Auto-Tune, I think recently switched to ARA2, as well as stuff like some other editing tools. You can just come over here and just launch the ARA2 extension there. So I don't have it. I'm going to show you how to do all the stuff inside of Very Audio, and I'm sure maybe Celemony has a live stream, and they could show you how to use their how to use the Melodyne how you want to, or consider just I think Very Audio is pretty slick too. right, so we see a question. All right, so we see first Uno Momento is granted Michael Pierce a pint of Carhu beer. So sounds good. Okay, so we see at the Border Studios, when writing drum MIDI notes, how can I click and drag to quickly write out bass drum on all eighth or quarter or others? Mine seems to be stuck only on writing 16th notes when I drag. Okay, so let's say I'm in the drum editor here. We'll select the drum editor. All right, so the drum editor is not necessarily based upon the quantize, but each track will have its own quantized value. The snap value could be independent for different tracks. So let's say I want my kick drum to be, quarter notes. So I want to do 4 on the floor. So if I come here and I drag across, it's going to do quarter notes. If I want to do snares in eighth, let's say half notes. So if I come here, we could only put in at half notes. If we want to put in hi-hats in eighth notes, I could come over. You choose eighth notes now as I drag. We're in eighth notes. If I want this to be eighth note triplets, I can drag across and we put in or 16th notes or 32nd notes. So each one of these will be dependent upon the snap value, so that you could have different snap values for different drums, so you could easily just kind of paint in your drum parts very easily. All right, so we see Jeff Sabelski has some concert stuff coming up, some pop Broadway, gets to play some guitar charts, like opening sequence to New World instead of just oboe. So. All right, and we see further question. So it says also with drum MIDI, how to dial in humanizing dynamics or time syncopation. All right, so let me just open up a quick drum part. Okay, so I will just quickly paint in. Let's say we'll come here. All right, so I'll just put this into like a 1 measure loop, and let's say we want to have this. All right, so let's say we put in kind of a generic. All right, so I'm going to start off with, like just some basic kick. All right, so say I'm just kind of doing super generic drum pattern. We want to be able to kind of make this feel a little more normal. All right, so some of the things that you could do, like especially with hi-hats, and there's logical editor presets for this, but we'll show you how you can kind of do it on any particular sound. So I want to take these hi-hats. So now everything sounds like really badly 1989 drum machine with velocity. So we'll go to our MIDI and let's go to our logical editor, and we want to say and we'll just clear this so we can build it from scratch. So we want to transform, type is equal to notes, and I want to say every other note. So we'll go to last event to is equal to like an event counter, and we could say, okay, I want to say every other note, I want to drop value 2 of a MIDI note, which is velocity, and we'll subtract, let's say 40. So now we'll listen to the hi-hats. And if I did this right, okay, I'm going to choose, instead of event counter, I'm going to choose every equals event counter. Let me just, it's last event. Did this earlier in the live stream, so let me just, thought it was last event and every other event, and we'll say so we want to take value 2 okay, so we'll say event counter every other event and 2. So now that I do this, every other hi-hat, I just selected the hi-hat. So you could do stuff like that. Now we could also just say I want to put in, like, instead of 16th notes, to make it a little more interesting, you could say let's put in like 8th note triplets. And let's come over here and we'll just make kind of more of a shuffle. So put an 8th note triplet here on the kick. All right, and then you could do something like, okay, I want to take the second triplet. So we're going to go like every second pulse of the triplet. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And then we could move that and drop the velocities of those particular notes. So they're more like stick drags. And if you kind of speed that up, you could come up with some, so it's like, we just want to take that and say, okay, right now we're at like 100 beats a minute. Let's speed up the tempo to 140. So let me just take tempo off there and we'll go to 140 and solo this. Sorry about that. So you could do like different shuffles and, you know, play with velocities and be able to kind of really trigger different events very easily. Just kind of playing around with different velocities on, you know, so velocities are really critical, and if you wanted to randomize the position of particular notes, you could do that kind of using logical editor. And, you know, some other cool things that you could do is, let's say we just have generic pattern here. If you go to the MIDI inserts, you could go to like a quantizer plugin and just say you could add more swing. On that particular track, so you could just say, okay, and we'll slow it down here to maybe 100. And then, taking every other hi-hat and, so if we make all the hi-hats really the same, that's when it gets boring. And then even if you want to do like little stick drags here and there, and as you select, you can just say, okay, I just want to do, and let's put in, some different, if you want to put in different sounds as well, you can just put in, different toms or whatever sounds that you want. So, and just feel free to experiment, but you get some great drum stuff. All right, so we see from Chris Hallam, great to see you on. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Haven't really seen an in-depth demonstration of the new Spectral Layers 10 transcription feature. Can you search for words and change mistranscribed words fairly easily? Also, export.srt. So yes, take a look. It's a great feature of new Spectral Layers. It's extra scary. So let's take a look. I'll just do this on a vocal phrase. All right, so we'll just listen to. It caught my breath while you called me to. Well, even now I'm so in love. All right, so we'll take this track. Let's go to our extension, and all right, so we'll go to our Spectral Layers. So we're going to load up the whole file into Spectral Layers. And now as we double click, what we're going to do is come over, and I think it's going to be in transcription from Unmix. All right, and we're going to choose English language, and we'll hit OK. So what this is going to do is basically figure out like the entire vocal file, and at that point it's going to tell us what words were sung. So it's not just limited to speech. All right, just about done. All right, so we see now when we go to kind of our timeline here that we could edit, right-click, and edit to transcription. So we can change it here. And we can see we'll just kind of listen to it. So this will just, and if we need to just, change a word here, then when we go to export, we could choose for it to be a .srt file, text file, or a CSX file. So if you wanted to export that as text and then drop it directly into like the notepad within the project, you could do that, or CSX file, or CSV file rather, then you could actually drop it into markers in Nuendo. So Nuendo will offer that function, but you could do your editing right here and export it as, .srt text or comma separated value files. Pretty scary. All right. Okay, so we see from Jeff Sabelski, hi Greg, my Cubase 12 is great, but it thinks at times my VSTIs are 32-bit. I guess I'm only using Steinberg software, and then when I close a project, then quit Cubase, it won't respond. Let me know, like when it says it thinks all your VSTIs are 32-bit, if it may make sense to so I'm not sure if you had the 32-bit versions installed or not, or if you could also let us know if you're running any like bridging software. So you said you only use Steinberg software. You may not need any bridging software since everything we have is 64-bit. But let me know if you have anything like JBridge installed that could still be kind of looking for 32-bit plugins. So, and that could be causing something like what you're running into. All right, let me just scroll up here. Sorry, my chat field jumped. Okay, so we have a question from Tommy C who asks, hi G, is there a way after you get the chords and progressions of a song, can you keep it together but only change the key? So then all the chords will change too. Thank you. So if what you can do, so let's say I want to take this guitar part and we'll drag it to our chord track. So if I wanted to select, I could hold down Shift and double click on the first chord. And if I wanted to, let's say, transpose all of the chords, what we could do is just come over here. We could just change our root key. And you could transpose just from the info line here. And you can see that all the selected chords will automatically just transpose right along with it. So select the first chord, hold down the Shift key, and double click. That will select all the chords, and then they'll transpose together from the info line. Always wonderful to see Lawrence Koch from checking in from Rhode Island. Hope you're well. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Happy Valley Farms just says, just started back using Cubase, using a UR22. Last program was version 6. I updated 12 Pro. Cheers. Well, we're glad you're getting back into it, and we hope to see you on future live streams, and glad that your UR22 is still working. It's a wonderful interface. So we see from Wismos, hi Greg, a little different question. As you may know better, any news about the new Yamaha Montage replacement? So the last I heard, it's coming out next month. I think that's what's been publicly announced. I haven't gotten I saw like a picture of it, which I think is floating around online. But I haven't seen any official announcements as to what's new in it. But I'm excited to see what the next generation is. So. All right, so we see when do we have a Zoom meetup? So I know that we missed part of last week because I was out for my wife's medical stuff. So I think we're, instead of doing like 2 Zooms like 2 weeks apart, that we'll just do it at the end of the month. So I believe that's going to be October or September 29th. So maybe 2 weeks from today. I think that's the last meeting. So we'll just plan on doing a Zoom on the 29th. So I just want to make sure we are able to get through a lot of questions and help people out. All right, so we see from Jeff Sabelski, Greg, Cubase freezes with end task unresponsive with the protective object server 32-bit. So generally what the protected object server is, it's going to be e-licenser related. So I would, I would go and reinstall the e-licenser program and update it to the latest version. And often that will resolve any of the issues that you get with messages like that. So it's not necessarily a plugin, but part of the Synchrosoft, which is the previous licensing model for the USB licenses. All right, so we see a question from Jazzy Lamel. So we see, hey Greg, hope all is well. I'm having issues with Cubase. When I finish a project and shut down a program, it will not shut down. It just stays stagnant. Can you help me with this? So sometimes it could be programs that are, often what causes this situation is when a plugin isn't releasing memory and then is causing Cubase to not shut down because it's still kind of holding on to some memory that generally it shouldn't be doing. What some people have found that helps is if you close the project and then close the program, that could help. But generally, I think most of the time this is related to kind of a third-party plugin that's often kind of hanging and not allowing the program to terminate. So see if you have like third-party plugins in your project and all right. All right, so we see from Plantian just asked, hi Greg, how is it possible to have a voice command to make mixing and editing faster? So I'm not sure if voice commands would really speed up workflow. I mean, if I was adjusting like a plug-in parameter, if I was to do it via voice, I would say, go to frequency EQ, go to band 7, set Q to 45, to 100, set frequency to 458K and and a 6 dB cut. If doing voice commands, I don't think would really speed things up. I think it would actually kind of slow down the process. And if while you're, imagine if I described everything, like when I'm going around showing particular editing functions, if I had to say every single function and remember every single function versus grabbing it with a mouse. So there isn't anything that's really set up for kind of, for mixing, for, speech control, for mixing and editing. Because I think doing it with the mouse and keyboard, a control surface, is going to be much faster and much more intuitive than having to speak all the time. And you don't want to, you don't want to be doing a project and have a sore throat kind of arguing with your computer. So there's nothing really that's set up currently to do that. All right, so we just see a question from @Source Studios is what's the Discord? Is it a forum? So you can kind of think of it as like an interactive forum community area. So, check it out and you could see it's kind of a great collection of, relevant articles, tutorials, and discussion. So it's probably like a 2020 version of a forum. All right, so we see from 2R Studios. Hi, Greg. Greetings from Switzerland. It's one country I've always wanted to go to. His question is, what's the most efficient way to use templates? Let's say I got a new project and want to use some tracks and stems templates. Do I have to manually move every clip? So if you wanted to include media, a lot of times people don't want to include media, and that's understandable because like if you're starting with a template, you may not want, like the same vocal file to be there. But sometimes it may make sense to have media files that are resident. So as soon as we come over, we can think of a template is going to be built from basically a project. And if we go to, if we save this as a template, so we'll call this long time ago. Okay, so we'll save that as a template. Now, when I start a new project, and we go to templates, I'll say, okay, every time that I'm here, we'll go to more. Let's just say, maybe I didn't save it right. Okay, it's in there. All right, so let's take another look. But all right, let me just see. I'll just load up one here, but so and then at this point we choose where we want our audio, where we want the project to be stored. So generally as a rule of thumb, have each project in its own unique folder. So we'll come over here, we'll make a new folder and then hit OK and create. And now we're going to start off. So if I had loaded up that template, all of my media files would be in there. So a lot of times people will have a template that doesn't have any media files in it. So that you're not playing back another song in your new song. So you can think of a template as kind of like your starting off point without audio. If you wanted to take an existing project and turn it into a template easily, I could come over here and say, okay, I want to just take all of my media and erase it. I could go to the pool and I would say remove unused media, and now we could save a template here. And this way, when I call it up, there's not going to be any audio files that are loaded up every single time when I start this template. So that way, so most of the time people don't want to necessarily start a template from, like with existing files in it. So if we wanted to just kind of come over here, that's where a lot of people get messed up. Right? Oh, every time I start, I get a missing file message, so you could kind of alleviate that. Okay. See, at Source Studio says, wow, it's right there. Shaking my head. Thanks again. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so we have a question from at Source Studio. How come sometimes I start up Cubase and open project and all my routing is gone, and sometimes even interface switch to the default one? It makes me reroute everything, including analog gear. So if you have your analog gear configured, one of the things I would do is just to come over here, and when you go to your audio connections, is once you have your analog gear set up, save it as a favorite. and then you could recall favorites with all their different settings. Generally, when that happens is as the project is opened, the audio, or when Cubase is open or project isn't open, the audio interface isn't being recognized. So if Cubase doesn't see the existing audio interface, it'll say, okay, we need to be able to route audio somewhere. So it will choose an audio interface, and sometimes that could be your built-in audio interface. So make sure that your audio interface is turned on and is being recognized by the computer before you start Cubase. If not, you'll run into that situation. All right, we see Neil Conway saying hello from the verdant state of Oregon, USA. Thanks for joining us today. Okay, so we have a question from At Source Studios. When using multiple MIDI controllers, is it possible to select only a couple, maybe 3 out of more available, maybe 6, let's say? I can only see to select one single or all MIDI input. So you have the choice for, having it be all MIDI inputs or single, but if you wanted to restrict what is included in your all MIDI inputs, if you go to your studio menu, to studio setup, we will come over to and go to MIDI port setup, and here you could choose, like, I only want these 3 controllers to be available in all MIDI inputs. So I don't want this, don't want this, don't want this, I want these 2. So that way you could restrict what controllers are actually available within the MIDI inputs, but that way you could pick and choose what's excluded and what's included within the MIDI inputs. Or you could pick and choose just the one particular channel or one input port here as you see fit. So we see from Neil Conway, so it just says, Greg, so we'd be able to pull the words out of Yellow Ledbetter? Awesome. So let's see. We see Ing X says, I don't miss the blue dongles. Now someone's going to say Dave the Songle. So I think it's been a pretty good transition. All right. All right, so we see a question from from Robert Higgins. I just installed Bewitcher for PadShop. It does not show up in Cubase or PadShop. Bewitcher was activated in Steinberg Activation Manager. Bewitcher shows up in Steinberg Library Manager. PadShop, Bewitcher, please help. So check, like if we come over, let's say we go to your media bay. One thing to check also is just to come over here and you'll see VST sound. So at this point, if you want to come over, you can see all the different sound sets here. So if you see Bewitcher, I don't think I have that, but try selecting it, and at that point, right click and rescan the disc and see if and that may make the connection. Usually the Steinberg Library Manager is, a pretty good indication. But let's say if we open up the Library Manager and we go to PadShop, check just out of curiosity when you go to the details and see, and you could go to this path and see, look to see if you have a lot of times PadShop will be sample based. And you could see that, make sure that you have some sample content. It's probably going to be 100 megs or bigger, and see if that makes sense. And you don't just have the presets installed, but you have the actual sample content installed as well. So try that out. See, NX just says, Synology Pro makes my Cubase 12 hang a lot after closing down a session. So. All right, so we see from At Source Studios, is it possible to get to colored knobs in the channel strip like Cubase 8, I think it was, much easier to see. H, M, M, L knobs. So let's take a quick look. So let's say we go to our channel strip here on the track. Just reread it again. So I think it's, so I don't think that that's changeable. If it's going to be like for the knobs, we could choose, if you want to see them as sliders or knobs, but I don't think that those are customizable. I think they're pretty, like as you kind of click in here, sometimes they don't want to necessarily draw your eyes' attention away from something, and it becomes more illuminated as you hover over, and stuff will become visible like when hovering in different zones. But I don't think there's a way of changing the knobs on the channel strip or the EQ. So. All right. Oh, you're so wonderful. See Brian Sawyer from Beulaville, North Carolina. Thank you for your email. My wife and I were very appreciative of your email. Thank you so much. All right. We see Gerald Ely tuning out. Wishing everyone a good weekend. We hope you have a great weekend as well, Gerald. Okay. Just reading through comments, seeing all the cool stuff Jeff Sabelski's done, cool places he's lived. All right, wonderful to see Nick on the live stream. Glad you can make it today. See, Jeff Sabelski went to high school in Costa Mesa. It's not too far from the Yamaha office. All right. We see Michael Teams granted Michael Pierce, or Lord Michael as he's referred to, as 1 gallon of strawberries and cream ice cream. All right. We see Neil Conway is just showing off with his German. All right. I'm German ignorant. I only worked for a German company for 31 years, but I should learn. But all my German colleagues speak English so well. All right, so I think I'm out of questions. We'll see if there's any more questions that sneak in. If not, we'll wrap up a little bit early. We'll just give it another minute or two. I know there's usually about 20 to 30 seconds from when I talk to when you guys hear about it. So we'll see if there's any more. And thanks for all the wonderful questions from everyone today. I hope everyone's learned a new tip or trick. And if you have, make sure that you subscribe to the channel or hit the like button. And we'll be back on Tuesday for another live stream. All right, so we see Nick saying, when is 13 coming? So nothing has been officially announced yet. But when it's released, we will be doing a live stream the next live stream afterwards will be dedicated to Cubase 13, kind of a detailed walkthrough. So. All right, so we see Paul Grooveside said, "Hey Greg, these live streams recorded to watch later." So yeah, if you go to youtube.com/Cubase, you could and click on the live tab up top. So there's 3.5 years of live streams like this that you could watch. Again, I think we're approaching 28,000 topics that we've covered. So they'll be available, and the index for today's live stream with all the questions with timestamps so you can quickly navigate should be up maybe like in 5 hours or so. I usually take a dinner break and catch up with my son, see how his school went today, and, hang out with my wife a little bit, dinner, and then we'll watch the live stream and type up all the questions with times. So yeah, they are all available, and if you have like particular topics that you're searching for, you could go to cubaseindex.com, and Jan from Stockholm has been incredibly generous in creating that site. All right, so you see Frank Heckel says, "Thank you so much for the wonderful webinar. I'm learning so much from you every time, Greg. So thanks for being on. And I wish I was in Spain where you were. It sounds like a really great spot to be. I enjoyed my time there and spent some time in Costa del Sol." All right. All right, so we see from Nick says, "Greg, you got to do a video with Hans Zimmer, him showing his setup and how he uses it. If that would be great." So we did do a spotlight with Hans Zimmer, I think 2019 or so. So he's incredibly busy, on tour and composing and doing all sorts of wonderfully intellectual pursuits. So we don't like to bother him with a lot of stuff, but there is a Steinberg spotlight video where Hans talks about Cubase, and it was just really, really great and wonderful and insightful. I think it has like 500,000 views or something. So. All right. So we see from Paul Grooveside says, "Wow, the index of topics sounds real useful." So I also have if anyone is interested, I have a Word document. It's like 500 pages. And if you want a Word document that has every live stream topic with timestamps where you could link directly to that, if you email me at clubcubase@steinberg.de, I'm more than willing to share that, so you could have just your own personal Word document and just go directly to any of the live stream video, and you could search that way as well. Thank you for the kind words about my wife's recovery. She's doing, the last 2 days have been just like significantly better, so I'm super proud of her and how she's doing. She probably shouldn't be working as much, but she is. All right. All right, so we see Michael Teams just saying, "Thanks, Greg. You mesmerized us again. Best wishes to your wife." So thank you so much. And thank you for everyone's kind words. It's really touching. All right. Yeah, so Paul, if you want to just email me, I'd be happy to, and that goes to anyone. We see maybe if Jazz Dude wants to reach out, I could share it on, and maybe they could just put the Word document on the Cubase Index or on the Cubase Nation Discord, if that's good, or I could, I'm happy to share that with anyone. All right. All right, so we see Jeff Sabelski just saying, by the way, he loves Dorka Elements. All right, great to see Cubase X on. Says, you don't have to worry about being quiet. Is working hard here. Pretty much watch the whole live stream, so that's good. All right, Anna, great to see you on. Thanks for joining us. And he says you're new here, so thanks for joining the live stream. And if you have any questions, we hope to see you on future live streams. And we will, in like 2 weeks from today, we'll have our Zoom session, and then that we'll be able to, and that's a great way to meet other people in the community as well. Okay, so we see Jazz Dude says he's going to send an email tomorrow, probably for the link. So yeah, I'm happy to share that Word document, and if you want, I could send it to you at the end of every month with the latest ones as well. All right. See, Anna will send $50 next year, so you could just put it into a Cubase update. There might be one coming soon. So, but great for you to join us today. All right, we'll see if there's any others, any other questions. But really wonderful questions today. I hope that everyone has learned some new tips or tricks, and keep tuned for announcements. Exciting stuff could be coming. All right. See John Costigan saying thanks for all the tips and guidance. And Cubase X saying best wishes for your wife. So yeah, considering she came home last week from surgery, she's doing phenomenally well, and it's great to see smiles on her face. Okay, so we see Neil Conway asking, does Dorico act as a plugin for Nuendo? So Dorico and Nuendo are separate applications. So I think we may see integration coming. There's been discussions of that in the future, but currently they are, two separate applications. All right. Okay, so with that, I think we're out of questions. Thanks again for spending part of your evening, afternoon, or morning with us, learning more about Steinberg products. I'm really grateful to be able to be a part of the community and help people kind of realize their creativity. And we look forward to seeing everyone on future live streams. And again, we do these on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern time. But it's just such a wonderful community, and I'm really, so grateful for everyone who's so incredibly kind and just a great group of people. So, but with that, we will see everyone on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy, and we will see you Tuesday. Take care. Goodbye.